Welcome to The Critique. Today we're looking at a document on recent Peugeot and wider Stellantis Group safety recalls, specifically potential battery fires and some component issues.
Right. Let's dive straight in.
Okay, so a key thing that struck me, and maybe you saw this too, is how it presents these two, very different kinds of risks, almost like they're equals.
Yes, that's exactly where I think the biggest opportunity lies for improving the clarity here. The current way it's laid out, just one after the other, it really waters down the crucial difference in how widespread and dangerous these two issues actually are.
Right, because as I read it, you've got this major fire risk, that's the one hitting, around 40,000 older cars, the 3008s, 508s, C5 Aircross, DS7.
And the Opel Grandland X, yeah, across several brands.
Exactly. And that's put right next to this heating cable thing, which seems much more contained, only about 4,000 specific 2025 models.
Precisely. And that's the weakness. The core difference, not just in numbers, but the root cause and the severity, it just gets lost when they're listed sequentially like that without any clear hierarchy. You've got a potential battery management software issue, maybe even needing a full battery swap, possibly leading to a fire.
A catastrophic failure.
Right. And then on the other hand, you have a mechanical connection, basically a bolt that might not be tight enough on a heating cable. It needs checking, maybe tightening to a specific torque. They're just fundamentally different worlds in terms of risk, both technically and frankly life safety.
Okay, but hang on, could there be an argument for keeping them together? Doesn't it show the full picture of what Stellantis is dealing with right now, all the technical actions? If you split them, maybe the reader misses that overall scale.
That's a fair question. I see the logic. But when you're communicating risk, especially safety risk, priority is absolutely key. So my suggestion is that the material really needs reorganizing. Create separate, distinct categories based on, risk severity and the size of the affected group, rather than just listing them in order.
Okay.
That way, anyone picking this up, whether it's an owner worried about their car, a journalist reporting on it, or an analyst tracking Stellantis, they immediately get the priority. They understand the difference in what needs to be done.
That makes sense. It feels more professional, more useful immediately. So how would that look in practice, like actual section titles?
Yeah, we need clear signposting. For example, you could have a really prominent section, maybe bolded, titled something like Critical Safety Recall, High Voltage Battery Fire Risk. That immediately flags the urgency for that big group of 2019 to 2022 vehicles.
Okay. Critical safety recall. Got it. And then for the other one, the newer, smaller issue?
You rename it completely to reflect what it is. It's not really a mass recall in the same sense. Maybe something like 48V System Service Bulletin or Production Correction, Component Connection Integrity, something that frames it accurately. You could even set up a two-part structure for the whole document. Part 1, mandatory safety recalls, high severity, and Part 2, technical service actions, component fixes.
Right, so the reader knows instantly what kind of issue they're reading about, and crucially, whether it's a major safety concern or more of a quality control fix.
Exactly. And speaking of severity, that brings us to the next point. The language used around the big one, the fire risk. It doesn't quite match the gravity of the situation.
Let's zero in on that section, the battery overheating part. It gives good detail on the numbers, the 18,000 Peugeots, 13,000 Citroëns, and DS7s, nearly 8,000 Opels.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it describes the problem feels a bit understated, almost too procedural, maybe?
I agree. The description of the battery overheating issue, which, let's be clear, is a significant, potentially life-threatening danger, it just needs a tone that properly reflects how serious that risk is. You can't really afford to be timid when talking about a fire hazard.
Yeah, absolutely. The weakness, as I see it, is that using very neutral language like the recall is due to a potential battery overheating issue, it kind of minimizes the potential outcome, doesn't it? But the real kicker for me is that detail about the fire risk existing even during charging. That's buried quite late in the text.
That's the crucial bit.
If I own one of these cars, knowing it could catch fire while it's just sitting there plugged in, maybe in my garage overnight, that completely changes my perception of the urgency.
It's vital. We have to remember who's reading this. For owners, that detail, that the car might be a hazard even when it's stationary and seemingly safe, that's critical context. It has to be up front.
So the suggestion is clearly to rewrite the opening of that fire risk section. Make it immediately emphasize the potential harm and, crucially, when it might happen, especially those high-risk conditions like charging. That grabs the reader's attention and conveys the urgency right away.
Precisely. Lead with the emergency. Don't bury the lead, as they say. For concrete examples, why not start that section with something stark and direct, like immediate risk of fire, affects 40,000 plus vehicles across Stellantis brands.
Okay, that's strong. And definitely pull that even during charging phrase right into the first couple of sentences. Such a powerful modifier.
Absolutely. It needs to be in the first sentence, maybe the second at latest. It underscores why this needs immediate attention, regardless of whether the car is being driven or not. And another small point on clarity there. Before you list out all the exact counts for each model, the 18,479, 13,273.
Yeah?
Maybe just briefly summarize the types of models affected first. Something like affects hybrid PHEV variants of the 308, 508, C5 Aircross, DS7, and Grandland X. Just group them conceptually first. It helps the reader grasp the sheer breadth before getting into the specific numbers for each brand.
That makes sense. So you give the gravity fire risk, even parked, and the scope these key hybrid models right at the start. Okay, now let's pivot to the third point, which you touched on earlier, this slightly jarring jump in time. We're talking about recalls for cars going back to 2019, 2020, up to 2022, and then bam, we're suddenly looking at production dates in 2025?
Yes, that chronological leap is, well, it's quite disruptive for the reader. Including those very specific 2025 production dates for the heating cable issue, right alongside recalls from years ago, it really blurs the focus of the document. What's it actually trying to do?
Right, a very confusion now. If I pick up something called Peugeot and Stellantis vehicle recalls, I'm probably expecting either a look back at past safety problems or a clear list of current mandatory recalls. But mixing issues from 5 years ago with a component fix on cars built, just between June 23rd and August 20th, 2025?
Right, a very recent, tight window.
It makes you wonder, is this a history lesson on battery issues, or is it a report on immediate, factory floor quality control? It muddies the purpose.
And that's the weakness. Blending them chronologically like this creates a sort of implied equivalence between a major historical safety defect affecting tens of thousands and a very current, very targeted production fix affecting a few thousand. The level of detail for the 2025 issue, mentioning cars built just within a 2-month window this year, screams immediate quality control, which is just a totally different beast from a recall addressing a design or component flaw that emerged years later.
That's a really important distinction. Okay, so we need to be much clearer about the timeline and what the reader should expect. If the aim is to cover everything current, fine, but state that. If it's mainly about the older safety recalls, then that 2025 issue needs context.
Exactly. The suggestion here is to very clearly spell out the intent and provide context for including that 2025 component issue. Otherwise, you risk the reader misinterpreting it, maybe even thinking Stellantis is already recalling 2025 models for fire risks, which isn't what this specific cable issue is about at all. It's about component integrity.
Right. So how do we make that actionable? What are some examples?
Well, for one, you could put a clear framing statement right at the beginning, something like, this report details both significant historical safety recalls affecting 2019 to 2022 models, as well as recent technical service actions addressing component integrity in specific 2025 production vehicles.
Sets the stage immediately. Okay.
And then, when you actually discuss that 48V heating cable issue, you can use the high level of detail as an advantage, but frame it properly. You mentioned the specific check, the tightening to exactly 8 Newton meters.
8 Newton meters.
That precision itself tells a story. It signals this is a very specific surgical correction for a known assembly process variation, you know? It clearly separates it from the much broader, more complex battery recall, which might involve software updates or even replacing the whole battery pack.
That distinction really strengthens the report, actually. It shows two different types of problems being addressed with appropriately different solutions. One's a massive safety campaign, the other's a precise manufacturing adjustment.
Exactly. And finally, if this document is intended for a wider audience who want a single list of all current technical actions, maybe think about the overall title. Instead of just recalls, perhaps something like Stellantis Vehicle Safety and Technical Actions Report. That title itself manages expectations better about the mix of chronology and severity inside.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. This has been really helpful in seeing how structure, the words you choose, and even just how you handle timelines can completely change how effectively this critical information lands. So just to quickly recap the main actionable takeaways here.
Sure. First, definitely reorganize the structure. Separate the high-severity battery recall from the lower-severity cable connection issue using clear hierarchical sections. Think mandatory safety recalls versus technical service actions or similar. That gives immediate clarity.
Right. Second, pump up the urgency in the language describing the fire risk. Lead with the danger and absolutely make sure that even during charging, detail is front and center, maybe even in the first sentence of that section.
And third, clarify the timeline. Use an upfront framing statement to explain why both old recalls and very recent production fixes are included. And consider if a broader title like Safety and Technical Actions Report might be more accurate if the scope is indeed that wide.
Excellent. Implement those changes, the structural separation, the tonal adjustment for urgency, and the chronological clarification, and I think this document will be significantly stronger and clearer.
Agreed. It's about ensuring the message matches the reality of the risks involved.
Great. Send the revised version back to us when it's ready, and we'd be happy to take another look.